other questions, but I'm going to call now a panel of workers. Mr. Griffin, I think Mrs. Griffin is here tonight for her husband. Mr. Yates, Mr. Ryder. Mr. Ryder here? Would you all come forward and sit behind Bruce, are all the microphones, do you think they're all on?
Thank you.
Again, when you speak, if you could speak directly into the microphone, put your head very close to the mic so we'll be able to hear you. And I think if we could start with Mrs. Victor Griffin. She is appearing tonight to read, I believe, the affidavit of her husband, who has been requested by his doctor that not to appear at any forum such as this. And we appreciate your taking the time to come. Thank you very much. Would you go ahead, say what your husband's position was when he was there, if that's not contained in the affidavit?
I'll read the affidavit. It says, my name is Victor Griffin. For approximately 3.5 years.
Ms. Griffin, we have city council's chosen to get a form of microphone that you have to put your mouth practically on the surface of in order to be heard. This could be remedied, perhaps.
My name is Victor Griffin. For approximately 3.5 years, from October of 1972 to February of 1976, I worked as a quality control engineer at the William H. Zimmer nuclear power plant. This affidavit evidences my concerns about fundamental defects in the quality control program for vendor-supplied materials, parts, and components at the Zimmer plant. These flaws have occurred for the last decade and result from explicit policy decisions of Cincinnati Gas and Electric Company management. The Nuclear Regulatory Commission failed to interview me during its 1981 investigation, but my concerns are relevant to the Quality Confirmation Program, which the NRC imposed to resolve all remaining safety questions at the plant. Independence and thoroughness are the keys to an effective quality control program. The current reinspection program fails both tests. I worked in quality control at General Electric for 20 years before resigning to take a job with Kaiser Engineering at Zimmer as a quality control engineer. I resigned in February 1976, shortly after I spoke with NRC investigator Gerald Phillips. I quit because it was obvious the NRC would not pursue my charges seriously. I wanted to avoid the untenable situation of being a whistleblower at Zimmer when my allegations were about to be brushed aside by the government. I am currently semi-retired since my resignation from Zimmer. I have worked as an independent quality control contractor. My current work is the inspection of defense components manufactured by various defense contractors. The core of my concerns involve the quality control system for essential or critical components, piping, and materials supplied by vendors to the plant. Critical components are those whose failure could interfere with the safe shutdown of the plant. These include parts such as pumps, certain steam pipes, valves, and various items of electrical equipment. Non-essential components will not prevent a shutdown, but their failure could still be dangerous. I first became aware of the problem with the structure of the quality control program about 2 to 3 weeks after starting work at Zimmer. John Jackson, Kaiser's corporate manager of quality control out of Oakland, California, reported disturbing news to me. Utility, Cincinnati Gas and Electric, had just announced that it would assume responsibility for quality control for Cincinnati Gas and Electric and GE purchases of critical components from suppliers. Mr. Jackson was upset because Kaiser originally had thought it would handle QC for Cincinnati Gas and Electric purchases. I asked John who would do it. he responded that Cincinnati Gas and Electric was going to hire an independent QC inspection service. We are concerned that the effort would be minimal. It turned out to be practically non-existent. There are several minimum steps for a proper independent inspection system. Tell the vendor to gather the parts that would be assembled into, for example, a valve. The individual vendor parts must be inspected when assembly has reached a hold point, after which it continue if all is in order. Interim inspections or hold points are mandatory because parts are hidden within the component after assembly is completed. After assembly, it is necessary to test the component under operating conditions in a dry run. This should occur in the vendor's plant. Then the part can be approved. Cincinnati Gas and Electric QC bypassed all of these steps and essentially just relied on the vendor's paperwork to buy parts off the shelf. Cincinnati Gas and Electric did contract with an inspection service, but the utility only used to check whether the vendor's paperwork was in order. In a later television program, Cincinnati Gas and Electric Vice President Earl Borgman offered the utilities excuse: we have to put our trust in the manufacturers. Cincinnati Gas and Electric was satisfied to call up other utilities and obtain telephone references on the suppliers. This practice of trusting the paperwork would turn the blood of a decent quality control engineer in the country to ice. The only time it could occur would be if there were some personnel at a vendor for 5 or 6 years and there had been a very low rejection rate over the same period for the same customer. You don't purchase nuclear parts and components like a jar of nails from the shelf of a hardware store or like a carburetor from an auto parts shop. I told Mr. Borgman, I'm not worried about the paperwork blowing up. There are sound reasons not to simply trust the vendor. First, implementation of vendor quality control programs has been erratic. Many vendors do not emphasize their quality control manuals, of which the employees are not even aware. In effect, the quality control programs for some of the vendors are just window dressing. Second, after 20 years with General Electric, I knew that the vendor's paperwork frequently is incorrect and does not accurately reflect the condition of the parts. As discussed above, the only way to obtain a reliable assessment of quality is for the customer to independently inspect and verify a sample of the components at the vendor's site, as well as mill certifications and blueprints. A statistical sample only works, however, with a large quantity. Usually for purchases of parts at Zimmer, there were not enough manufactured to justify a sampling program, so they all must be inspected. In short, comprehensive independent verification of quality simply did not occur at Zimmer for vendor purchases. The Cincinnati Gas and Electric shortcuts essentially began at the beginning of vendor purchases, with a few exceptions. As a result, almost all of the critical components, parts, and materials purchased from vendors are suspect. To add insult to injury, frequently the paperwork was not even checked for up to 1.5 years. When superficial inspection did stumble across a faulty component, the utility would return the part to the vendor and fail to file a nonconformance report with the NRC, formerly called the Atomic Energy Commission. Another improper quality control practice at Zimmer involved upgrading materials. Kaiser would order material as non-essential and then upgrade it to essential after it arrived. Essential materials such as plates and piping was required by the KEI QA manual to come from an approved vendor. If we needed to purchase essential material and the individual vendor was not approved, Kaiser would just make the purchase for the same part as non-essential. When the material was stockpiled, field construction would requisition it. If construction requisitioned essential material, Kaiser QC manager William Friedrich would sign off to release the material for installation. When we didn't have material from approved vendors, he would release it from the non-essential materials stockpile and in effect upgrade it.